Good morning and welcome. This is the Early Morning Show. I am Goldalee Bruce, sitting in this morning for Hey Ramkisoon, who has the morning off. If you're watching Miss Ramkisoon, good morning to you. We have a very interesting show. As usual on Friday, we take a look at sports. So Jassy Marique will be coming on a little bit later on in our program this morning. But before that, we'll be speaking to the Minister of Food Production, Devant Maraj. This is in our build-up to the budget, which will be presented on Monday the 1st of October. So we'll be talking to the Food Production Minister as to what we can expect for his sector in the upcoming budget. And we'll also be speaking with the head of the Jericho project. His name is Philip Alexander, and he is talking about the candlelight vigil that will be held tomorrow, along with members of the MSJ, the Highway Reroute Movement, and One Accord. They are coming together to express their dissatisfaction, calling for the AG and the Minister of National Security to resign or to be removed from their posts. So we'll be talking a little bit more about that. And also a subject that's particularly interesting to me. We're talking about the Trinidad and Tobago Film Festival. I don't know if you've seen any of the films that have been part of that festival, but it's really a wonderful opportunity to learn more about the Caribbean, to learn more about Trinidad and Tobago, as well as the world around us. So let's begin our program first by looking at the Guardian newspaper today. We'll start with the front page. On the front page of the Guardian newspaper today, united against Section 34. We keep hearing about Section 34. The PNM, the MSJ, and unions hold talks today. And on the front page, there's a picture of the dismissed Minister of Justice, Herbert Volney, making his first public appearance since being fired as the Justice Minister on Wednesday, when he attended the Karamath Journalism Fellowship Award ceremony at the Hyatt Regency in Port of Spain. Parties say no to the coalition. PNM and groups hold talks today on national issues. That story by Gail Alexander. The opposition People's National Movement will meet today with the Movement for Social Justice, trade unions and other civil society groups to focus on national issues, including constitutional reform, policies on labour, energy and revenue management, as well as the way forward for the grouping. And on the back page, perfect start for the West Indies. A great start. West Indies bowler Ravi Rampal there, celebrating with teammate Sunil Narine, back to camera after taking the wicket of England's batsman Luke Wright during the ICC 2020 Cricket World Cup Super 8 match. Let's give you something to think about now before we go to our first break, and we welcome on the Minister of Food Production right after that. This is a bit of a long one, but I saw this at my grandmother's home the other day and I thought I should share it with you guys. It says, if there be righteousness in the heart, there will be beauty in the character. If there will be harmony in the home, there will be order in the nation. When there is order in each nation, there will be peace in the world. Each of us have an individual responsibility to contributing to peace in the world, and it begins with righteousness in our hearts and doing what we can to make that positive change and be better people generally. We'll take a short break now. When we come back, Minister Devant Maraj. Welcome back to the program. Once again, I'm Goldalee Bruce, sitting in for Hey Ramkisoon this morning. And we continue our build-up to the budget discussions. And joining us now is the Minister of Food Production, Devant Maraj. He's been the Minister of Food Production since June of this year, so it's a relatively new portfolio to him. Mr. Maraj, welcome to the program. And I think we can start with the question of, in this budget, can we expect to see the Ministry of Food Production being given more priority than the last year? I mean, last year there was a budget allocation of $1.9 billion. Can we see a figure that is greater than that? Or what should we be expecting?
Well, you'll have to wait until the Finance Minister reads his budget on Monday to find out exactly what each ministry will get. Of course, like all other ministers, I hope that my ministry gets an allocation that we can live with for the next year. I'm sure we wouldn't get as much as we would like, because everybody would like to get, no doubt, as much as they could in order to effect the various programs that's conceptualized by the ministries in order to move their particular ministry. We have a number of projects within the Ministry of Food Production that we'd like to see off the ground, and those that are already in train developed further and deepened.
Let's talk about those projects a bit more. What are the priorities for your ministry for the next fiscal year?
Well, since assuming the portfolio of Minister of Food Production, I've met with various stakeholders within this sector, and the agricultural sector is one with a deep and long history in Trinidad and Tobago, and a number of persons are directly and indirectly affected. And my discussions with them indicate really that some of the key issues that surface and orbit around their concerns include tenancy issues, land security, access roads and bridges, marketing, predial larceny, and the issue of downstream industries in terms of agro-processing. So these issues are critical to the development of the sector in a proper way, and resources will have to be allocated in order to alleviate the challenges that they bring.
Now, we often hear about the strategies for revitalizing the agricultural sector, and we heard a lot from the previous minister in terms of bringing new forces into the agricultural sector, trying to get people who would not usually think about agriculture as a viable form of business to come into food production. How successful have the strategies that are already in place been, and how do you measure that success?
Well, Minister Barrett has laid a very strong foundation for the Ministry of Agriculture, and it has to be taken with the backdrop of years of neglect for agriculture. And I think he did a tremendous job, and the policies that were started under him continued and will indeed be deepened. And new initiatives have already started under my watch. We are seeing some positive results already. As you recall, Minister Barrett had highlighted the growth of onions locally and the experimenting of growing carrots, which were two crops really not traditionally grown in Trinidad and Tobago. So those experimentations will continue, and we are hopeful that we could get crops out of that and reduce our dependency from imports of that. The importing bill already, we have seen a drop of about approximately 20 million this year compared to the same time last year. So we are seeing an impact, albeit it's small, it's a beginning and a start.
Now, Minister Barrett had launched, under his watch, the Ministry of Food Production had launched the Food Action Plan 2012-2015 toward lowering the food import bill by half by the year 2015. Is that still the aim of the ministry?
Yeah, as I keep repeating over and over, the same administration, the policies that Minister Barrett would have brought, he would have brought into the cabinet, of which I'm a part of, and we would all subscribe to the policies before it becomes official government policy. So those policies remain in train, and the commitment to reducing the food import bill remains. The target of halving the bill from 400 million remains very much in our mind. Also, reducing food inflation, and is very much part of the focus strategy of the Ministry of Food Production.
We're almost to the end of 2012, and we're down by 20 million, and we are trying to bring that food import bill down by 200 million. Is it really an achievable target?
Yeah, it is an achievable target once we continue to develop the sector and really empower the farmers and add value to their whole contribution to the sector. The issue of agro-business is one that we'll be focusing on, in which the farmers will be able to get much more in terms of value added out of their efforts.
What is the status of the land use policy?
The land use policy is before Cabinet, and as you know, Minister Tiwari had developed that land use policy, and it will be soon laid in the Parliament.
There has been a criticism leveled against the government that agriculture, and it's not just this administration, but it's been leveled against successive governments, that agriculture and food production is still not a greater priority as it should be. Would you say that for your government, for this administration, food production is a priority?
Yeah, well, again, Our food import bill, which is a reflection, if you want, on the importance that's paid to agriculture, is in 1962 was $99 million. In 2009, 2010 was $400 million. That increase over that period of time didn't come by accident. It was due to decades of neglect. In fact, the previous administration held the view that to support the agricultural sector was to support the opposition. Hence, you could understand the reason for the neglect. This administration has taken a very firm position. Our manifesto clearly indicates that agriculture is one of the main pillars of the People's Partnership Manifesto, and its development and its support remains critical to our overall national vision. And as a result of that focus, resources and emphasis will be played on developing the sector. So that is why, for example, for years the sheep and goat people were crying out for a forage farm, and their cries were being virtually ignored. Yet within a few months, we launched the Mongello forage farm in Chinchin, which would allow for small ruminants farmers to be able to access feedstock for their charges.
There's been the criticism also leveled that the valuable arable land is being used for the construction of houses rather than for agricultural purposes. Is the land use policy addressing that? And can we see food production being the priority there?
The land use policy would be addressing those things in a very direct way. Of course, there will always be the competition for housing versus everything else, industries as well versus everything else. But there is a commitment on the part of the government that arable land be used for food production in a meaningful way.
We're about to take a very short break, but before we go to the break, you mentioned that yesterday at Cabinet, the post-Cabinet press briefing, there was a very important announcement made about Caroni 1975 limited lands.
Yeah, yesterday Cabinet agreed that steps be taken to implement phase 2 of the sugarcane farmers' tenancy regularization project, which would involve the issue by the Commissioner of State Land of standard agricultural leases to the legitimate tenants who are cultivating sugarcane on lands formerly owned by Caroni 1975 Limited, and that the state provide the cane farmers continue to undertake the agricultural activity in that sector. And the value of this activity for phase 2 and phase 3 amounts to some $340 million. Phase 1 included, for those who are not familiar with the project, collection and verification of tenancy data, who occupy the land and so on. Phase 2 would involve processing and delivery of standard agricultural leases to legitimate tenants. And phase 3, of course, would include processing and delivery of standard agricultural leases to squatters who were cultivating the sugarcane land on the former Caroni 1975 lands. We're looking at next year, in the first and the second phase, first year, of expenditure of approximately $170 million, which about approximately $120 million would be involved in infrastructural development in the lands, because the lands right now are contiguous and we're broken up into smaller parcels, and you'd need to have access roads, which are very important in order to get your produce out of those areas. Surveying and so on would cost approximately $23 million.
Minister Devant Maraj talking about the phase, he's moving into the second phase of the distribution of Caroni 1975 lands. When we come back, we'll talk to the minister about how much exactly of the over 70,000 acres of Caroni lands have been used for agricultural purposes. We'll take a break and come back after.